What did the strange teacher at your school do that made them so strange? NSFW. I had a chemistry professor who was afraid of students. He'd actually turn pale when one approached him. I think he chose the wrong profession. For one thing, a school bell intercom interrupted their lecture, so they ripped it off the wall and continued. This FCKing bell doesn't dismiss you. I do. Teacher smash. Health teacher wore a skin-tight morph suit complete with anatomical details to teach kids about their bodies. We had an anatomy teacher in high school that would accept roadkill or other dead animals in exchange for extra credit. He would then boil off all the tissue and reconstruct the skeleton for display in his room. His skeleton collection ranged from squirrels and foxes to an ostrich. A health teacher from my former high school was actually arrested yesterday for selling 45 bags of heroin to a cop. And she's a superintendent's daughter. The coach of he girls basketball team had a separate office next to his teaching room. It was supposed to be an office, but instead he had a TV, pull-out love seat, and he had the windows tinted jet black. He taught typing, and every class he would give us work and then go into his office with girls from his basketball team and shut the door. About 5 years after I graduated, he was arrested for having had sex with over 8 high school girls that they know of. Edit. I looked him up and he was only convicted of having sex with 2 underage girls. But neither were even the ones I saw him with. MR. P was our 6th grade homeroom guy and social studies teacher some subsequent years. He spanked everyone, boys and girls, over his knee on their birthdays. Then they signed his paddle, celebrating a birthday. Ambidextrous math teacher wrote on the whiteboard very quickly with both hands at the same time while wearing a red clown nose. He was so weird but so brilliant. Edit. Yes. It was college algebra and trigonometry. And with each hand at the same time he would very rapidly write completely different parts of a problem until the whole problem merged together. All while cracking jokes completely unrelated to the subject at hand. He would then go back and explain the problem step by step. Have you ever seen a comedian with a red clown nose do a Jekyll and Hyde act and be a really zany clown who tells bad jokes with his back turned to you while facing a wall, and be a straight-laced math professor while facing you? That was this insano. The music teacher couldn't calm the class down, so she yelled out FCK you all, left the room and actually drove home. My high school trigonometry teacher had this dreadlock that he showed everyone on the last day of class. You normally couldn't see it because his hair is so curly and puffy. Oh, and also because IT's 20 years old and he saved IT in a bag that he keeps in a cabinet in the back of the class. He convinced one kid to touch it. A teacher in my middle school would regularly threaten to throw his students in a classroom closet, where he kept his imaginary badger. He would also walk around the hallway while pretending to be a plane, complete with sounds, when he thought no one was watching. We were. The last one is adorable. I just imagined a grown man with his arms extended at his side, yelling nee as he ran down the hall. My high school German teacher was very religious and told all of his classes he was saving himself for marriage and encouraged us all to do the same. When he came back to class after he got married, he finally looked like someone removed the stick out of his ass and he was relaxed for once in his life. Then he all told us to wait until marriage because it was worth the wait. Guess his new wife was pretty good in bed. Or good enough for him. He wouldn't know the difference. Christian school. We had a sub for an all-girls elective that told us that you should think of Jesus when you're having sex with your husband. She also said that all MS are the highest form of worship to God. She never came back. Hey. MA and PA. Hear that? I worship God better than you do 5 times a day. Take that, guys. A history teacher in my high school had narcolepsy. So he'd be in the middle of some story about Vietnam and then just pass out where he sat. We'd all just sit and talk amongst ourselves until he woke back up. Sometimes class ended before that. So we all just walked out and the next class came in and sat down. pretended to be a dinosaur to demonstrate Darwinism. Like chasing students, sprinting round the class with his hands in front of him like a T-Rex. He would also run across the desks, jumping between them, roaring. He's the leader of our local council boards now. Back in like 6th grade, our science teacher started out the year saying that she had crabs. A few minutes later she brought out a little tank with like 4 crabs. She did weird shit like this for the rest of the year. There was a history teacher that would just constantly eat bananas. I never saw him eat anything other than bananas. He used to get really angry when people would see him eating his banana too. He started to eat it in his office alone. I was looking for another teacher one day and looked into the classroom to see Mr. Banana teacher eating his banana. He stormed out of the room and screamed at me for being in the hallway. Yeah. He was strange. He would make paper airplanes out of our tests and throw them one by one in the hallway. The further it got, the better the grade. He was a funny teacher though. There was a science physics teacher at my high school who put on this persona of being a complete psychopath who always spoke in a calm but cold emotionless voice for like the first 3 years of high school. It wasn't until I had him in my last year that I realized that he just does that to FCK with the younger students. Actually turned out to be genius as it keeps all the young immature kids in line and gives him a reputation as super strict. Which people don't get in on until they have matured up actually care about school. Because I don't know why you'd be doing physics if you didn't care. Absolutely legendary ruse on his part. My 8th grade PE health teacher was a raging alcoholic. Think W.C. Fields. Big nose. Slurred speech. During our unit on drugs and alcohol, he brought in his empty liquor bottle collection as a visual aid. We had PE and health on alternating days, and he would forget he had shown us his collection during the interim. So if he showed us his collection on Monday, he would show us again on Wednesday. This went on for several lessons. The following week, he had a sub one day, and the sub said the teacher had left a note saying he couldn't remember if he had shown us his bottle collection. Some of the students lied and said we hadn't seen it. So we got to see it again. In the spring, he collaborated with one of the high school PE teachers, also an alcoholic, to take his students on a field trip to the bowling alley. While we were bowling, they both went into the bar and came out with drinks. They said it was Diet Coke, but it was some pretty flat light colored Diet Coke in short glasses, if you know what I'm saying. So they had Pepsi? Made us write essays about dragons. Like you know, the ones that spew fire and shit. He wasn't joking though. He really believed that they were real. Edit. He was later laid off. Did he take marks off of students who tried to pass off wyverns as dragons? A teacher in our middle school was arrested for having sex with a 13-year-old boy in her minivan. That counts as strange, right? She screamed at me and kept me in at recess for simply having a small paperclip in my possession. I didn't even touch the damn thing. I took it off my math workbook and set it on my desk. Nobody knew why. I had a chem teacher in high school who was a total nutcase. One time, for an assignment, we tried making French toast in the lab. This resulted in 2 pans with holes burned through the bottom. And one chick in my class was nearly set on fire. Edit. I remembered that he tried the same shit again the next period. He was obsessed with wolves. He had pictures of them f***ing everywhere. Memorial Day. All my other teachers were talking about 9/11 and stuff. He showed us pictures of him swimming in Saddam Hussein's swimming pool in the Iraq War. He finally got fired after somebody caught him having a tickle fight with the 60-something-year-old, male, alcoholic janitor. Edit. One time another class dissected fetal pigs. They were keeping them in a drawer after class and one bag came open and leaked fluid all over the inside of the drawer. Didn't get cleaned up until the next year's chem teacher did it. Apparently there's also a stain on the ceiling from where he squeezed a pig spleen and it squirted all over. Picture, if you will, a full blackboard. The teacher, before wiping it clean. Takes a thoughtful look at it and proceeds to wipe it. However, he leaves a E in the middle of the board. As he fills the blackboard again, the E fits in seamlessly. That guy was certainly dancing on the line between genius and madness. History teacher always used to tell stories about how he was in all of these wars. How he defended his house against tanks in 2008 with 2 of his family members and 3 AK-47s. Always connecting stuff with the Illuminati or religion. Told us more stories about how he fought 13 demons every day. Giving a speech about how much he hates gays and how it's wrong to be gay. Every day. And not really teaching us much about history, other than his edit. Also he told us a story how he beat up 6 rugby players by himself when he was 16. That sounds like something from 4chan. The science teachers at my you.I were the weird ones. One of them kept one of those vibrating ball toys, like the ones you'd get your dog to chase, on his desk. Except when he'd show videos to the class. Apparently he'd turn it on once most of his class had dozed off and place it in his lap. There was a bomb threat one day and he jumped up when the alarm went off. Everybody noticed the toy fall from his lap and the fact that his pants were unzipped. The other science teacher wanted to go to med school but didn't, so he thought he was doctor. He'd medically diagnose kids in his classes with mental disorders or rare viruses. The real strange thing was that he removed a wart from his thumb with some sort of acid from the chemistry lab. Then the nail fell off and his whole thumb turned black over the course of the semester. I went to high school the following year, so I never did find out if the whole thumb eventually fell off. Dumbledore. An English teacher in my high school would rub her vag against the corners of the desks. It was always super uncomfortable hilarious if you'd call her over for help and she's just subtly and nonchalantly working it while talking about Beowulf. I had a biology teacher who threw a chair at a student. A computer teacher in middle school hit a student with a desk. Not my tempo. My freshman science teacher ended up on To Catch a Predator, so I'm yeah. Math teacher brings in random junk, expired candy, interesting looking garbage he finds on the street, decades old textbooks, broken appliances, that sort of thing, and gives it away as prizes for solving riddles and stuff. Sometimes there's something cool, but not very often. He's also got an old VW minibus parked outside the school. Not sure why though. He walks to and from school every day. And his wife, also a teacher, drives her own car every day. I suspect she won't let him park it in their driveway. And the puns. So many puns. Easily one of the best teachers I've ever had. But he's a tad strange. Another teacher at the same school is extremely surly open. When we watched the Odyssey, she talked in some detail about what she wanted to do to various characters. I had a science teacher that told us he was a street John's ambulance volunteer, and his greatest moment was when he gave mouth to a cat. My English teacher would always smell of booze and walk around with a coffee cup that smelled like moonshine. We believed he was a recovering sober guy. My high school was a nut house. Some of the best ones were biology physics teacher. There are a ton of stories. But one of my favorites is the time he caught 2 students hugging in the hall and yelled, with absolute conviction, that was how gang violence starts. Edit: I forgot to mention that he made several videos starring his science hero alter ego Jack Terrain and would show them in class. Pre-calc teacher. He claimed to suffer from manic depressive disorder and would have episodes in class. During one class he lobbed some pretty inappropriate insults at me for talking. Then spent the rest of the year creepily and profusely apologizing to me in private. He even cornered me at prom to do so. EP chemistry teacher. Proudly demonstrated her flexibility by putting her head between her ankles. This was directly after telling us that she and her husband met in high school. You STEM types are weird. My art teacher a couple of years ago. Let's call her Miss Knob. Miss Knob was famous for giving 30-minute detentions. That might not seem that strange, however. She had a knack for giving them out for the smallest of things. For example, I once had a cough and said present in a sniffly way. She gave me a 30-minute for being silly. My friend once got 430 ms worth of detentions in one lesson. He taught government during the week and did karaoke at a Mexican restaurant on the weekends. He'd also get super drunk. Went by Cowboy Bill and would sing and dance with students of his. German teacher that claimed I love kids but I can't eat a whole one. Math teacher that showed us video of his extensive Star Wars action figure collection. The room he kept them in had 4 different colored walls representing Tatooine, Hoth, Endor, and Cloud City. Edit. I originally said Dagobah but meant Endor. Thanks you farts and butts. Also Hoth and not both. Smartphones my ass. Both were excellent teachers. The IC teacher at my high school believes in fairies. If you say fairies don't exist, you will be reprimanded. Sometimes her fingers are fairies and she talks to them. There have been many teachers in the district who were fired for watching PRN during class. One, that I know of, who was arrested for having sex with a 7th grade student and several other teachers supposedly knew about it before he was fired. My French teacher who I believe is a paranoid schizophrenic. And so on. This is what happens when being a teacher isn't a respected profession and don't get a high enough salary to entice anyone who isn't crazy to do it. Bought girls chocolates, teddies and concert tickets. Commented on their skirt length, smacked a girl's ass one year. He was in a permanent teaching position so he didn't leave the school until last year after teaching there for 34 years. Irish law is stupid. He also didn't teach us any of our course at all and we're trying to cram the 2-year course into what little time we have left with our new teacher. I had this teacher who used to cut up licorice with these gross, rusty looking scissors and give everyone in the class a piece. This went down every day. Looking back I think that was very creepy. I had a teacher who would knock on the blackboard with the chalk while writing and ask the class who is knocking. The dude was messing with us pretty seriously, I hope. I worked with a teacher that was really cool. He was great with kids. Taught a shop class where kids actually made really cool furniture. And coached girls basketball and girls softball. Everyone loved him. Including me. But he wore the same clothes every day. Every single day. He wore track pants and a track jacket. It was either the same ones or identical ones. No matter the weather. He wore the same thing. It was insane. But he was such a good teacher no one even brought it up. Asterisk. On an unrelated note. Once we were in the bathroom and he pulled out his dick to pee right as we were talking. Cock like a baby elephant's trunk. One gym teacher regularly checked in on the girls in the shower after the gym class. Science teacher in junior high would eat his lunch in the garden and talk to the trees. The strange teacher at my high school was my Algebra 1 teacher. He would walk up to the girls of the class and put his hands on their shoulders, then proceed to lean down and whisper in their ears, "Are you having any trouble, sweetheart?" And then he would proceed to smiling like he was getting a thrill off of it. There was also the one time when in the middle of class, he was standing in the corner of the room and he began to pretty much feel up his nipples. Right then and there in front of a class of 27 students. It was goddamn hilarious to watch and at the same time was absolutely horrifying. He was then known as Mr. Nips for the rest of the year by our class. Most of the other teachers were pretty creeped out by him too, but he isn't the only teacher in my school who creeps out the other teachers. Got plenty of stories if anyone is interested. I had a math teacher that would drink one of those tiny tomato juice V8 cans in every class period. We asked people in other classes and he would finish one in all the other class periods. 2. There were 7 class periods a day. How was this dude not orange? Probably had alcohol in them instead. I had a priest as in religion teacher at my girls only school and we had a pole at the top of the class where we would hang maps of the world for geography lessons on. And this priest used to rub the pole between his legs. Which was really creepy and all. He also gave grades dependent on how big your boobs were. We once tried to talk to the headmistress, a nun, about it but she didn't believe any of it. I had a math teacher in high school named Emma Burner who always came to class baked as FCK and would spend about half the class talking about random stuff, like one day he spent all class talking about Savant. I was disappointed but wasn't surprised he was fired at the end of the year. Emma Burner? Really?